My fiancée mocked my job as a grease monkey in front of her whole team, so I walked out and let everyone see who she really was. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. I was 12 when I first helped Dad fix a Chevy's busted alternator. That smell of oil and steel, it stuck with me. I loved it. Built my own shop at 25. Felicity used to say it was refreshing dating someone who worked with their hands. She told friends I was real. I believed her. I thought she respected me, even when she'd roll her eyes at grease stains on my shirts. Maybe I ignored too much. The first time Felicity came to my shop, she wore heels and laughed about manual labor like it was a novelty. But then she kissed me, said it was sexy I built something from scratch. I remember thinking we'd balance each other, her corporate sharpness. My grit. Her apartment had a view of the skyline. Mine smelled like Duminan's 40 and fresh paint. Back then, I thought it meant we were a team. Turns out I was wrong. At her firm's fall gala, Felicity introduced me as her handyman who runs a garage. People chuckled politely. One guy even asked if I fixed dishwashers. I laughed it off, but my stomach turned. Damon, her coworker and our mutual friend, pulled me aside later and said, "You're more than she lets on, you know." I didn't get it then. I just shrugged. But that moment stuck with me. Why was she always minimizing me? When I gave Felicity a hand-built tool chest for her birthday made it from reclaimed oak, she laughed. "What am I supposed to do with this?" she said, smiling in that sweet but condescending way. I forced a grin. Told her it was a symbol of hard work and dedication. She patted my arm like I was a child. That night, she posted about her new designer handbag from her boss. My chest wasn't even mentioned. I felt invisible. Felicity started joking in front of friends, saying she was the breadwinner while I just played with cars. I noticed the way they looked at me after. I wasn't embarrassed at first, but the way she'd smirk while saying it, like she was doing stand-up at my expense, wore me down. Damon once said, "She's got a sharp tongue." I nodded, pretending it didn't sting, but each dig carved a little deeper into something I couldn't ignore. I invited her to a car show where I presented a rebuilt 68 Mustang. She showed up late, in heels again, barely looked at the car, said it smelled like gas and rust. When I won second place, she clapped with the enthusiasm of someone watching paint dry later. She told her coworkers, "He loves his toys." Damon raised an eyebrow at me that day. "That car was art," he said. I nodded, jaw clenched tight. At dinner with her parents, Felicity introduced me as a mechanic who doesn't mind getting dirty. Her mom smiled thinly. Her dad didn't bother hiding his disdain. "Well, at least you're not unemployed," he joked. I laughed, but my grip on the fork tightened. Damon later texted me that was brutal. I shrugged it off, told him I was used to it, but I wasn't. Each comment made me question if I really belonged in her world. She once joked about getting me a real job at her company, you know, where you don't need oil under your nails. Her friends laughed. I didn't. I just stared at her. "You think this is funny?" I asked. She blinked, shrugged. "I'm just teasing." Damon's silence at that moment said everything. After the party, he said, "You sure she's proud of you?" That question clanged in my head for days. I wasn't sure anymore. At her holiday office party, Felicity gave a toast, thanked her team, praised herself, then joked, "And to Nolan, who keeps my car and my life running." The room laughed. My face burned. I caught Damon's eyes across the room. He didn't laugh. I stood, walked to the mic and said, "If I'm just a tool in your toolbox, I'll remove myself." Gasps followed. Felicity's face froze. That was the moment everything broke. Loud in public, Felicity tried to grab my arm, whispering, "You're overreacting." But I shook her off. "You don't get to belittle me and still keep me," I said. Some of her coworkers stared into their drinks. Damon stepped closer, standing beside me. "You're not wrong," he said aloud. I walked out, leaving my drink and my engagement behind. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but it was cleaner than her smirks and the fake smiles inside. The next morning, Felicity called over and over. I let it ring. Then came the messages. "You embarrass me. You made a scene. We need to talk." Not once did she apologize. I turned off my phone and opened the shop early. Damon dropped by with coffee. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I will be." That day, I serviced 4 cars back to back. Each fix felt like reclaiming something: dignity, clarity, control. My hands knew their worth. Felicity showed up at my shop 2 days later in her luxury SUV. Sunglasses on, voice sharp. "You made me look like a fool," she hissed. "No," I said, wiping grease from my fingers. "You did that yourself." She looked around the shop like it was a landfill. "This is what you're choosing." I looked her dead in the eye. "It's honest, unlike you." She left without another word. That was our last conversation. That week, I boxed up everything she left behind: photos, clothes, memories, and dropped them at her place. I didn't wait for her to come out. Just left them with the doorman. Damon later told me she was shocked I went through with it. I wasn't. I'd made peace with the end. That night, I stayed late at the shop, tuning an old El Camino. No wine, no tears, just metal silence and the sound of choosing myself. Damon came by that weekend with 2 beers and a story. She told her you had anger issues, he said. Tried spinning it like you were unstable. I stared at him. Of course she did. But he continued. I told them the truth. I told them what really happened. They listened. For the first time, someone had stood up for me. I didn't say much. Just nodded, cracked the beer, and clinked it against his bottle. That night, I pulled out my notebook, the one where I sketched shop layouts and listed dreams. I wrote a new plan: expand the garage, take on apprentices, maybe even teach a class. Felicity used to laugh at that notebook, said it looked like kid scribbles, but holding it now felt different. This time, no one was mocking me, just me, my ambition, and the quiet hum of potential. For the first time in years, I exhaled. A week later, Damon forwarded me a group chat screenshot. Felicity had been mocking me long before the breakup. In one message, she wrote, "He thinks he's some blue-collar hero. It's cute, another dating down builds character." I stared at the screen. Flood cold. This wasn't just a slip, it was her truth. Damon added, "Thought you should see this." I replied with one word: thanks. For once, the betrayal didn't break me. It cleared everything up. Turns out, Felicity had told her team she was only engaged to keep up appearances. One of her interns, a young guy named Chris, emailed me anonymously. She bragged about dating you for pre, said it made her look grounded. I sat there staring at the screen, stunned. All that time, I thought we were building something real. But I was a prop. Chris added, "Sorry man, you deserved better." He was right. I finally believed it. An old customer, Mrs. Alden, came by the shop and said, "I saw that woman of yours on LinkedIn. She's claiming she helped build this garage." I laughed, bitterly. Mrs. Alden wasn't joking. She showed me the post, proud to have supported my fiancé's automotive startup journey. It read, no mention of me by name, just her face, smiling, standing outside my shop like she owned it. That wasn't support, it was branding. I filed a legal notice. My lawyer sent a cease and desist. Days later, Felicity replied with a casual lol, "Good luck." But when I posted my own story online, photos, timelines, receipts, the support poured in. Former clients, friends, even strangers commented, "You built that." Damon reshared it with the caption, "Truth matters." Felicity's LinkedIn post mysteriously disappeared the next day. I didn't gloat, I just felt a clean. Like truth, once out, didn't need a mic drop, it just stood on its own. A local business journal reached out, asking to feature my shop after seeing the post. "Your story resonates," the reporter said. I hesitated but agreed. When the article went live, "Mechanic builds empire with grit, not degrees." It went viral in the city. Felicity's company held a pre-meeting that week. Damon told me, "She's not the golden girl anymore." I didn't feel revenge, just validation. My work finally spoke louder than her jokes, and people actually listened. Damon texted, "You'll want to see this." Felicity had posted an apology, sort of. "I misjudged the way I communicated about someone who meant a lot to me." She wrote, "No names, no accountability, just corporate fluff." But the comments didn't let it slide. People called her out, quoting her old words. Some even tagged me, saying, "He deserves better." I didn't respond. Silence was louder. Let her sit in the echo chamber she created. One of Felicity's coworkers, Marlene, emailed me. "I used to laugh with her. I'm sorry," she wrote. Attached was a photo from a team building trip. Felicity in the center, holding a drink, miming a wrench and smirking while others laughed. Grease monkey chic. The caption read, "It hit me hard. But I also realized I wasn't crazy. I hadn't overreacted. They really had turned me into a punchline, and now the punchline bit back with truth." A radio host invited me to talk about Trace DePaul and respect. I nearly declined. Media wasn't my thing, but Damon nudged me. "It's your chance to shift the story," he said. On air, I spoke plainly about dignity and labor, about not letting anyone shrink your worth. Listeners called in, shared their own stories. One woman said, "You reminded me of my dad. He was proud to fix things." That hit me. My hands weren't just skilled, they mattered. The shop started getting more walk-ins. One guy said, "Heard you on the radio, wanted to support someone real." Another left a note, "Thanks for reminding me pride isn't a luxury." I hung that one by the register. Felicity once called my work grimy survival, but now, it was community, it was identity. Damon came by and said, "You're becoming a symbol, man." I laughed, but deep down, I felt it too. This wasn't repair, it was revival. I got invited to speak at a local high school's career day. Me, a mechanic, standing beside suit and tie folks, I brought a socket wrench and passed it around. "This builds futures," I said. The kids leaned in. Afterward, one girl said, "I didn't know you could love your job like that." I smiled. Felicity once said I had no ambition. But that day, I wasn't just working, I was inspiring. Her mockery had turned into my microphone. A customer brought her teenage son in and said, "I told him you're what hard work looks like." He stared at the tools like they were treasure. We fixed a flat together. That night, I thought of all the times Felicity rolled her eyes at my grease-streaked hands. Now those same hands were shaping someone's view of pride. Damon called it full circle. I just called it right. My story wasn't shame, it was strength passed on. I got a letter from Felicity's ex-roommate. She always used people. It read, "You were the first who pushed back." She included a photo Felicity in college, holding a sign, "Future CO No Broke Boys." It wasn't surprising, but it still stung. That arrogance had always been there, I just refused to see it. But now I wasn't haunted by it. I folded the photo, tossed it in the bin. Not out of anger, just release. Marlene messaged again. "I've left the company," she wrote. Couldn't support that culture anymore. She told me about how Felicity spun every failure into someone else's fault. "But you were the only one who didn't play along," she added. That struck me. All that time I'd felt powerless. Turns out, saying no in front of everyone wasn't weakness, it was disruption. I didn't just walk away. I shifted the room even if I didn't mean to. At a bar one night, a guy tapped my shoulder. "You're the mechanic from that article, right?" I nodded. He grinned. "You made me quit my finance gig. I'm learning welding now." I blinked, surprised to serious. He nodded. "Never felt proud before." I laughed. Who knew my worst moment would spark someone else's beginning? Felicity tried to shrink me. Instead, I expanded others. That realization, that was bigger than vindication. That was purpose, unexpected, but real. A local college offered me a part-time guest slot to teach shop fundamentals. "We need people like you," the coordinator said. I laughed, remembering Felicity's jab about real jobs. This offer felt like a door I didn't even know existed. I accepted. On the first day, I brought my original notebook. This was my blueprint. I told the class. Some nodded, some smiled. I felt something shift. That grease-stained dream had finally earned its spotlight. One of Felicity's newer colleagues reached out anonymously. "She's been warned by management." The message read, "Her has documentation now. You're not alone." It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth landing where it needed to. I didn't ask for her downfall. I just stopped shielding her from her own reflection. Damon texted, "Karma's a slow mechanic, but it works." I smiled. I wasn't cheering, but I wasn't crying either. I was just, finally unburdened. Felicity emailed me directly. "Let's talk," it said. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just entitlement still. I didn't reply. I archived it and moved on. Damon laughed when I told him. "That's growth," he said. It didn't feel like power, it felt like peace. Saying nothing, needing nothing, that was new for me. Her voice used to control the room. Now, it didn't even make it past my inbox. That silence, it was freedom. An old classmate dropped by. "Saw your name in the paper," he said. "Always knew you had it." We weren't close, but his words carried weight. I thought back to high school, the whispers about trades being fallback options. Now my path wasn't just valid, it was admired. Felicity had used my craft as a punchline, but out here, beyond her bubble, it was legacy. Every oil stain told a story. And mine, it finally had listeners. I hosted an open garage day, free lessons, coffee, music. Families came, kids tried tools. One mom said, "You're changing how people see this work." I looked around, laughter lifted hoods, proud smiles. This wasn't just a shop, it was a hub. Felicity once asked why I stayed in a dirty job. Looking around now, the answer was clear. Dirt washed off, pride didn't. That day, the community showed up not for a sale but for a message. A teen named Marcus stayed late after the event. "Can I intern here?" he asked. I saw something in his eyes, hope, fire, maybe even a mirror. "Show up on Monday." I said it. He grinned so wide I almost laughed. Felicity said I lacked ambition. But helping Marcus, that was vision. I wasn't chasing boardrooms or titles. I was building futures, one socket wrench, one kid, one truth at a time. And this time, I knew my value. Marcus showed up early. Eager and nervous, I handed him gloves and said, "Let's get greasy." We worked on a brake system together. He asked questions, listened, learned fast. Watching him reminded me of my 12-year-old self, greasy hands, wide eyes, endless curiosity. That day, I didn't just teach a task, I passed on pride. Felicity never saw that side of me, but Marcus did, and maybe that was the win that mattered most. Legacy over labels. An email came from a local trade school. They wanted to feature my journey in their newsletter. "Your story is motivating students," they wrote. I agreed. When the article went live, former classmates reached out, some with respect, some with regret. "Didn't realize what you were building." One message read. I didn't reply to most. I didn't need to. Their recognition wasn't fuel, it was just a signal. What I built stood on its own, with or without applause. One Saturday, I walked past a bookstore and saw a display, "Success Doesn't Wear a Suit." Inside was a photo of my shop, used in a self-help book about unconventional success. I wasn't asked, but I didn't mind. It meant something. Damon laughed when I showed him. "You're a metaphor now," he said. I shrugged. "Long as they spell Bishop's Auto right." Pride didn't need headlines, it just needed to reach the kid who thought he wasn't enough. A former client brought his daughter by and said, "She wants to be a mechanic too." I showed her around as she asked smart questions. Hands on everything. Felicity once told me, "This isn't a future, it's a fallback." But watching that girl's eyes light up, it was the future. Damon took a photo of us under the lift. "You're building more than engines," he said. That stuck, because he was right. This wasn't just work, it was impact. A journalist from a national magazine emailed, "Your story's gaining traction. Can we feature you?" I hesitated, but said yes. During the interview, she asked, "Do you think Felicity helped shape this success?" I paused. She shaped the resistance I had to overcome. When the article published From Grease Monkey to Mentor, my inbox exploded. Not with praise, but with stories. People shared their own journeys. Their own shame turned pride. I wasn't just seen, I was sparking mirrors. Marcus brought in a friend, quiet kid, hoodie up, eyes sharp. "He wants to learn," Marcus said. We started slow oil change basics. The kid barely spoke, but by the end he was smiling. That was cool. He muttered. I nodded. "Come back tomorrow." Felicity used to say I wasn't leadership material. But here I was, guiding futures. Not in boardrooms or PowerPoints, but in Greece, patience and earned trust. And those were lessons no title could teach. One night, Felicity's mom messaged me. "I was wrong about you," she wrote. "She told us stories that made you seem small." It wasn't an apology for her snide comments, but it was something. "You were always kind," she added. I read it twice, then let it go. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need her validation anymore. Growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just knowing which messages don't need answers. I walked past Felicity once, by accident, downtown lunch rush. She saw me, hesitated, then looked away. I didn't stop, didn't nod, just kept walking, not out of spite, but because I didn't owe her anything. Not a glance, not a pause. Damon later said, "That's when you know you've moved on." He was right. The best revenge wasn't cold, it was irrelevant. I wasn't a part of her narrative anymore. But I was finally writing my own. My shop hit its 1-year anniversary since the breakup. I threw a small celebration, free tune-ups, music, snacks. People came from all over. Damon toasted. To Nolan, who proved pride doesn't need a paycheck title. I looked around. Marcus. Customers, new apprentices. Felicity had once mocked this place as a dead end. Now it was a lawn pax. My hands were stained, yes, but also steady, capable, proud. This wasn't a fallback, it was a foundation, and it held strong. A local nonprofit offered to sponsor apprenticeships for underprivileged teens at my shop. "We need more people like you mentoring," the director said. It floored me. Not long ago, I was defending my worth at a cocktail party. Now I was being trusted to shape lives. Damon joked. "Not bad for a grease monkey." I laughed. The insult had lost its sting. We'd reclaimed it, turned it into a badge. That was the twist Felicity never saw coming. Marcus surprised me with a plaque to Nolan, for building more than engines. He'd made it from scrap metal and wood. I stared at it, speechless. "You deserve it," he said. It wasn't flashy, but it meant everything. Felicity had scoffed at my gifts, called them quaint, but this was honor, earned, not bought. I hung it in the office where customers could see. That plaque didn't just decorate a wall, it testified to who I'd become. Damon looked around the shop one evening and said, "You ever think maybe you had to go through that breakup?" I nodded. Every day. Losing Felicity wasn't the tragedy I once thought. It was the ignition. Her disrespect lit a fire I didn't know I had, and from the ashes of that broken engagement came everything I now stood on: respect. Community growth. That wasn't revenge, that was restoration. That was the twist. And I lived it proud. Some mornings, I still catch myself expecting her voice sarcastic, dismissive, but it's silence now, peaceful. I walk into the shop and smell oil coffee. Potential. Marcus waves. The new kid set up tools. This place hums with respect. Felicity's ghost used to haunt these wrenches. Not anymore. I light the open sign and think, this is mine, earned, honest. Every insult she threw became fuel. And now, my hands don't shake. They build, they lead, they matter. I keep the plaque Marcus made above my desk. It reminds me every day, what I build goes beyond machines. I teach, I guide, I grow. Felicity once said I was simple, maybe, but simple isn't small. Simple is steady, reliable, unshakable. When new apprentices doubt themselves, I hand them a wrench and say, "You're capable." I wish someone had said that to me back then. Now I get to be that voice for them, and for me. On quiet days, I flip through my old notebook. The pages are smudged, edges torn, but they hold my story. Plans I once made in private now live in engines, in classes, in kids like Marcus. Felicity laughed at that notebook. Now it's the blueprint of everything I've built. It reminds me I never needed anyone's permission to dream. Just guts, grease, and time. The pages are worn, but the vision clearer than ever. A customer once asked if I missed her. I tightened a bolt and said, I miss who I thought she was. The truth is, I mourn the illusion, not the woman. Felicity was a lesson, not a loss. Without her dismissal, I might have settled. Instead, I stood up publicly, loudly and finally, and what followed wasn't loneliness, it was clarity. Sometimes, respect starts with leaving the room where you're laughed at. I walked out and into myself. The garage walls now have photos of events, apprentices' milestones, no trace of Felicity, not out of spite, but because this story isn't hers, it's mine. Each frame captures a win: first student, first radio show, first scholarship kid. I used to measure success by her approval. Now it's in grease under young nails, in questions asked with bright eyes. I built more than engines, I built belief, and no one, especially not her, can take that from me. Damon says I carry myself differently now, like you don't need to explain anymore, he said. He's right, I don't. My work speaks, my students thrive, my community trusts me, there's no need to defend a life built on truth. Felicity's opinion used to define my worth. Now, her silence is just background noise. I don't live in opposition anymore, I live forward. With hands that build, a voice that teaches, and dignity no one can mock. I wrote a new note in my old notebook: respect isn't given, it's grown. That phrase sits above my desk now. Apprentices read it, visitors ask about it. It sparks conversations about dignity, worth, and walking away from mockery. Felicity once called my ideas childish, but this one, it took root, and now it's spreading through metal, sweat, and truth. One wrench turn at a time. Her laughter faded and my message didn't. It echoed louder. I added one more page to the notebook, blank. Clean, waiting, not because I'm out of ideas but because there's more to build. Felicity saw me as finished, but this life, it's just starting. That page reminds me every day I'm not a chapter in her story, I'm the author of mine. Grease-stained, resilient, and proud. Every smirk she gave fueled a tool, a voice, a space, and now I carry none of her weight, just momentum. Felicity was quietly transferred to a lower-profile team. Damon said, no more spotlight for her. Her fall wasn't dramatic, just it dimmed. Her cited multiple complaints, but I didn't celebrate. I didn't post. I just got back to work. Her power faded not because I fought her, but because I stopped feeding it. Justice didn't need applause. It needed distance. And I gave it exactly that. My garage became an official training partner with the city's youth workforce program. We took on 5 apprentices. Each one came with doubts and left with skill. I remembered being dismissed as less than because I didn't wear a tie. Now I was shaping futures. That was the reward, not a title, not a clap, but knowing these kids saw pride in their hands. And maybe in their own stories too. A community mural went up downtown, faces of local chain makers. Mine was among them, wrenches in hand, smile calm. When I saw it, I didn't feel pride, I felt settled. This wasn't about spotlight, it was about presence. The same hands Felicity mocked were now painted on concrete, public, permanent. That wall didn't just show who'd succeeded, it showed who endured and stayed kind. That was the real win. At a small speaking event, a student raised her hand. What do you do when someone mocks your dream? I paused. You build it anyway, I said. The room went quiet. That sentence wasn't rehearsed, it came from every bolt I ever turned, every insult I outlasted. Felicity used to make my path feel laughable. Now, it lit paths for others. That's all I ever wanted, for someone to hear my story and feel less alone. Marcus brought in his first solo client, a neighbor's truck. He handled it start to finish. When he handed back the keys, the woman said, "You've got good hands." He smiled, then looked at me. That glance said everything. He saw what I saw in myself once: potential. That truck wasn't just a repair job, it was proof. Felicity's world never had room for growth, but mine, it overflowed with it. And Marcus, he was just the beginning. The shop hosted a career fair. Felicity's firm wasn't invited, but they showed up anyway. I watched from a distance as her team stood awkwardly among booths of welders, carpenters, coders. No one lingered at their table. Damon leaned in and whispered, "Funny how the suits look lost." I didn't engage, just kept handing out flyers, shaking hands, answering real questions. That day wasn't about them, it was about who showed up, and who finally felt seen. A thank you card arrived from Marcus' mom. "He's different now," she wrote. "He believes in something." I held that card longer than I expected. Not because I needed gratitude, but because it confirmed what I'd hoped: impact ripples. Felicity once said I lacked influence, but here was proof in cursive, in sincerity, that I was shaping lives. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need anyone's spotlight. I'd built my own, and it lit others. At a dinner honoring local mentors, they called my name. I walked to the podium, hands still stained from work that day. No speech, just a nod. The applause was real. No punchline, no patronizing tone, just respect. Felicity used to say I clean messes. That night, I stood among educators, activists, builders. not despite my grease but because of it. I didn't clean up anymore, I constructed not damage control but foundation. And that made all the difference. Now when someone asks what I do, I don't flinch, I don't joke. I say, I run a shop where people learn pride. Felicity's voice used to echo in my doubts. But now, her laughter is just background noise to a story far louder. One I wrote with my own hands, so if you're mocked for building something real, keep going. They might laugh, but when the work speaks, it roars, and I never needed her applause.